All right, I wanted to share with you the new FLSA overtime rule and just a few important facts to do and also consider as these changes start taking place. And of course, you know, FLSA is the Federal Labor Standards Act. So the new rule extends overtime protection to millions of additional employees who are not currently eligible for overtime. And it's usually those individuals who fall into the executive or management, administrative, or professional classification as salaried, which again exempts them from overtime. And with the new rule, workers who earn less than $50,000 a year, that's less than $50,000 a year, will be paid overtime. So even if they are classified as a manager or professional. So the current threshold for salaried exempt in any of those classifications, manager, professional, administrative, is at $23,660, meaning that that's the minimum that you can pay that person to be classified as exempt from overtime. And the workers' earnings or salaries beneath that threshold will now be entitled to time and a half whenever they work more than 40 hours in a week. So again, just like your hourly employees would be eligible for overtime, now these salary non-exempt individuals who are making less than $50,000 a year or at the threshold of $47,476 will be eligible for overtime for anything over 40 hours a week. So why the change? So a lot of discussion has been around individuals who were either misclassified or overworked or either underpaid as either managers, social workers, researchers, insurance claim workers, many other categories. The debate has been for years that these individuals were misclassified on purpose to prevent them from earning overtime when in reality their job takes more than 40 hours a week. So why the 47,476? They did a very unique calculation. They took the 40th percentile of salaried workers in the South, which was the lowest region, and came up with that rate. The initial discussion was going to be around 52,000, but again, after some analysis, did some more research, they finally settled on the 47,476. And you should keep in mind that the last adjustment for FLSA overtime rule was done back in 2004, and that was during the George W. Bush administration. So we are due for a change. One of the other things to keep in mind is that the Department of Labor has talked about reviewing this threshold every 3 years to keep pace with what's going on in our economy and everything else. So they've already put out that the new regulation or the new threshold will be around 51,000 starting in 2020. So again, they've already announced that change to take place a few years from now. And of course, you've got a little bit of time to comply, but all of the changes need to take place by December 1 of 2016. Again, by December 1 of 2016. And I would caution you on this about this change because your employees who are savvy and smart, particularly those who are classified as salaried now and are making less than $50,000, they know what's going on. They have been following this news for the past year since the initial discussion started, so you don't want to miss that deadline and put yourself at risk of some type of FLSA, a Department of Labor claim, or an audit because you've chosen not to make the necessary changes for those who will now be affected by this new ruling. So a lot of things to do, a lot of things to consider. So I'm just going to share a few with you to kind of get you started to thinking about how this will impact your organization and the individuals who work within your organization to help you further your mission. So you've got to think about either you're going to limit your employees to work in a 40-hour work week so that you don't incur overtime, that time and a half, or in reality, you've got to start paying your workers more money. So you're either going to be paying them more money for the time that they are working overtime, or you're going to limit that to 40 hours. And this has a lot of parameters around what that actually looks like for the organization and the type of work that you do. So the first thing that you should do is go ahead and make a list of all of those employees who you know are classified as salary and are making less than $50,000 a year. That's the first place where you need to start. Who's classified as salary, non-exempt, meaning they're not entitled to overtime, and they're making less than $50,000 a year. The next thing that you should do is just review the job duties and the job descriptions. And some of you have job descriptions, some of you don't. But look at the actual duties. Don't just rely on the job description, because we know that job duties can change significantly than what may be written on a job description, particularly if it has not been updated. And if you do have job descriptions, you want to make sure you update that information based on the changes that you'll make. Meaning if you're going to adjust the salary and leave that person in that position, or if you're going to reclassify that person as non-exempt. The other thing that you need to do is to consider whether it's the right time now to eliminate or outsource certain positions. This has been a discussion with several clients on whether it's the appropriate time to make significant changes within their organization on positions that doesn't add as much value and may add additional value if jobs are combined, or again, those duties are outsourced. The other thing to consider is benefit changes. So you may have tiered classifications for benefits that you offer to your employees. You may have an executive category, a management category, or salary category, and then benefits for a non-exempt category, meaning the amount of accrued time that they may get for sick time or vacation. So you may have to look at making changes to these benefits as well, and how will that impact individuals who were once classified as salary but now being classified as salary non-exempt and will go into a different benefit category. Another thing to consider is the time tracking. So normally salaried employees, unless they're under some type of grant, do not track the hours that they work, and that's a good thing. You don't want them tracking hours, because you don't want to assume that their work is tied to the number of hours, or their pay is tied to the number of hours that they work versus the position that they're responsible for. So now you may need to start tracking some of those individuals who will now be classified as non-exempt and eligible for overtime pay. The other thing to consider is electronic device curfew. So again, those individuals who have a tablet, who receive emails and also answer emails at 9 p.m., at 1 a.m., at 4 a.m. So how can you institute a policy to eliminate or restrict electronic device use so that you're not incurring overtime for those individuals who are now reclassified? This is another big thing with us being a technology-driven society. Most people do their work remotely or can communicate remotely, and anytime that employee is engaged to work and they're working on behalf of that organization and they are paid on an hourly basis, then they need to be compensated. So this is another issue that will come into play on how do you restrict that work, particularly when they're using their devices. Another area to consider in addition to the electronic device work is work that's away from your work site, that is not essential to their job, meaning they take work home, they may do a report or answer emails while they're on vacation. Even some employees who are in a volunteer role that's assigned by that organization. So if you tap an employee to be your representative on this community, committee, or initiative, should that employee who was once salaried, who's now salaried non-exempt, be paid for that volunteer time for those meetings or those activities? So that's another thing to consider. And then employee morale. So again, most individuals, and studies have shown that individuals who have been promoted to a salaried position look at that as a place of esteem within the organization. They may no longer need to clock in and out. So what does this do to the morale within your organization for those who've been looked at in a leadership role and may still need to be in a leadership role directing their team, but is now classified as non-exempt and is required to clock in and out as their subordinates do? So you're going to need to keep your pulse on how these changes affect the morale, and certainly schedule some time to talk to those individuals as a group and one-on-one about the changes that will take place and how it will impact their status and the way that they work and everything else around how they contribute to your organization. The other thing that you need to look at is how does this impact people who are in unique positions. If you're a nonprofit and you have employees who pay is tied to a grant, how does this affect the grant? So that should be considered. Anyone that's tied to a special project, it may be receiving bonus pay or additional pay. How does that affect their role? Some who are doing quasi roles where they may be doing a lot of salary or hourly work and salaried work. Any type of special arrangement will need to be looked at. And most importantly, your bottom line. How does these changes and increase in pay, whether you're increasing someone's salary to ensure that they meet the threshold and remain in that salaried non-exempt position, or if you are changing that individual to non-exempt and now you're going to be paying time and a half for any overtime hours. How does this affect your bottom line? Do you need to readjust your pricing and your rates and your billing rates? So all of those things should be taken in consideration as you get ready to make these changes. So listen, I feel your pain because I too will have to go through this and help navigate a lot of my clients through this treacherous process. So we've known that it was coming down the pike for over a year now with the discussion, and it's certainly upon us now. So what do? So a couple of things to keep in mind. The White House is making the reforms through the executive rule making process under the FLSA or Fair Labor Standards Act. So it doesn't need congressional approval to do it, although the thing that may happen is that Republicans, because this was made by a Democratic White House and administration under President Obama, they may try to block the reforms through some type of appropriation process. So we'll certainly keep you in the loop on any significant changes or if this will be blocked or stalled. But as of now, we need to consider making these changes. So what do? So what actions do you need to take in moving forward? Start now. I would not wait until the fall to start trying to make these changes because, again, they can be very significant on your benefits, how you hire new employees in starting next week. Do you need to start making those changes for any new hires that you bring on board? And then your plan is to make those changes for those current employees. So I would start now with the evaluation process. I would assemble your team, anyone that should be involved, your CFO or your controller, your accountant, your financial individuals, as well as your administrators, managers, anyone that need to be a part of this team, and actually work it as a special project, meaning that you have a project timeline. Each individual has accountability because there are so many things that can be missed or dropped during this process, and you don't want to make any errors and end up with the Department of Labor audit or FLSA claim for doing something wrong when it comes to paying your people correctly. And then last but not least, you've got us as a resource, so I encourage you to call us. Our experienced project consultants are ready to help you. We've done this for years. We work with organizations in adjusting pay prior to the FLSA ruling to make sure that there was no pay disparities within their organization. So we're certainly qualified and ready to help you navigate this process and help you outline and see the impact of what it means to your organization. That's it for now. So again, don't hesitate to give us a call and schedule a consultation to talk about these changes. We look forward to helping you, and thanks for being allowing us to be a part of your team to help cultivate your people in the places that they work.